Hello Internet, I'm Elliot the Purple Haired Doofus and welcome to Buddy Reads, where we read a small selection of a book and review it for you. Today we are covering the end of Artemis by Andy Weir. I hope you finished it yourself because I do not want to ruin anything for you. Where we left off, we had Jazz going into Artemis after everyone had passed out, including Dale and Loretta. So she is the last conscious person on the moon right now, essentially. There's a couple others somewhere else, but it's mainly her. And she has to save the population of the moon. It's a grand adventure. And the first thing that she does is she goes for Rudy's office because Rudy has a passcode to go to the habitation unit, and that way she can clear out all the chloroform. And when she gets to Rudy's office, she sees him passed out in his chair and she grabs his gizmo and starts to leave when she feels immense pain in the back of her head. Because someone had clubbed her in the back of her head. How could that be possible? And then she turns around and she sees it's Alvarez, the Spanish guy who was hired to kill her. And he's got a pipe and he's gonna kill her because he was in the fire safety hatch area when the chloroform hit, since that's where Rudy kept the prisoner until he needed to be deported. So he has an oxygen tank and a broken pipe, and he is using it on Jazz. And he is pushing her up against walls. He is doing everything he can to incapacitate her. There's a moment where he has a bar up against her neck and she just kind of wiggles and keeps wiggling. And then she realizes that he has both hands on the bar and no hands on the oxygen tank. And when he wiggles to go up to meet her, his air unplugs and he immediately gets chloroformed and passes out. Jazz then grabs the bar and stands up and she's like, haha, that's what you get. And she goes to the habitation unit to fix all the air and has a bar in her belt loop. She's standing there and she's like, I don't know exactly what to do with all of these buttons and everything. And she flips some switches and pumps some air directly from the airlock to Dale and Loretta. They wake up and they're talking to her and they're like, that's amazing. We're awake. We're alive. We didn't die. How's it going for the rest of Artemis? And she's like, I don't know. And she says, I'm going to try. And she takes off her mask and she immediately, that was a mistake. She puts the mask back on as quickly as she can. Dale and Loretta are like, well, that's not good because we only have a few more minutes before the entire city of Artemis dies of chloroform poisoning. And Jess is like, that's really not good. How are we going to fix this? I believe it was Dale had the idea of going to the main oxygen lines and shutting off the one that had the chloroform pumping into the Artemis. And then all of the other oxygen scrubbers were clean off the oxygen. And so Jazz is like, that's great, but how am I going to get there? And she gets into one of the tourist hamster ball things. And she's like, how am I going to get out of the airlock once I'm in the hamster ball? And she leaves it slightly deflated so that she can grip things and open things. Problem is as soon as she's slowly opening the airlock, the hamster ball slowly inflates more and more and more because essentially she is in a balloon in a vacuum. And it wants to inflate so much that she won't be able to get out because the door isn't open all the way. But eventually she does this, and she heads to the oxygen line. And Dale heads to the oxygen line. They have a conversation about how is Dale going to get to the oxygen line without killing Loretta. And he says, I'll just put her in your suit. And Jazz is like, my suit! She's like, it's either that or we kill her. She's like, fine! Jazz and Dale get to the oxygen tanks. And Dale is trying to shut the valves, and the valve won't open to send the clean oxygen into Artemis. And Jazz is like, oh no, what are we going to do? We don't have much time. And Dale keeps on turning and turning and turning. He's like, I got nothing. And there's no rocks or anything that they can use. And then Jazz looks down at her pants, and she sees the pipe that was being used to just practically kill her. She's like, She pulls out the pipe, and she says, Dale, tell my father I love him. And I totally forgive you, buddy. And she uses the sharp end of the pipe. She opens up the bubble and hands the pipe to him. And she is exposed to the vacuum of the moon and the sun and everything like that. And she goes white. Like everything in her world goes white. And you're essentially believing that she killed herself for the better of Artemis. I'm sitting here thinking, wait a minute, but she's the narrator. How is she narrating this story if she essentially killed herself? What? The final chapter starts up and she wakes up in a hospital. And I'm like, what? Huh? It turns out that Dale had wrapped her in the ball as soon as he possibly could and chucked her over to Loretta to be put into the vehicle. Once she was in the vehicle, they could repressurize the air. So Jazz was only in the vacuum of space for a couple of minutes. While very severe, supposedly people can live and survive the vacuum of the moon for a couple of minutes. But she was also on the sunny side of the moon. So all of the sun's UV rays attacked her. So she's like covered in burns at the same time. How? Rudy comes to visit her, and he says, you know, you did good, but the Queen of Artemis still wants to see you. Also, you might want to check your bank account. I hear there's been a large deposit, and Jazz checks her bank account, and there's 1 million slugs in there. She's like, oh, whoo. Jazz heals up over a couple months that we don't really get to experience, and then her father comes to visit her at a specific location. And her father's like, what's going on? She's like, I want to show you something. She lets him in. It's his welding location, and everything looks pristine. Everything looks brand new. Everything looks usable. And he's looking around, and she's telling him where everything is, and she's like, this is where you kept that. It's brand new. This is where you kept that. It's brand new. This is where you kept that. It's brand new. And you find out that she used that specific amount of money that she's been rattling off. It was to buy back the tools that she had lost from her previous boyfriend, who had been an ass, and destroyed them all. And her dad's like, I never... you were my daughter. I was always going to love you, but you didn't have to do all this. And I forgive you. And she says, thanks. Then she goes to talk with the Queen. And the Queen's like, you did a bad thing. And Jess is like, yeah, I know. And the Queen has the deportation papers on her desk. And Jess is like, I saved your entire plan and you're going to deport me? Are you kidding me? You're not going to do this. The Queen's like, what makes you say that? And she says, well, have you ever noticed any hard drugs on Artemis? And the Queen says, no. Have you ever noticed any guns on Artemis? And the Queen says, no. Have you ever noticed anything incredibly dangerous on Artemis? And the Queen says, no. And Jazz says, that's all because of me. I'm the only smuggler in town. If you deport me, it's not like it's going to stop smuggling. There'll be a slight vacuum, but someone will start picking it up again. And they might not be as ethical as I am. And you might start getting some crazy stuff up here. Queen says, well, I have to punish you somehow. Jazz actually gives her a signed confession of everything that happened. And the Queen says, what's this? You're making it easier for me to deport you? And she says, no. If I ever screw up again, you can use those papers and you can deport me. If not, I guess I have to stay here. The Queen says, I still have to punish you, though. Jazz says, I don't know what to tell you. And the Queen says, well, maybe I could fine you. And Jazz is like, there's no fines on Artemis. Maybe you can make a voluntary donation then. And Jazz is like, I'm not making a voluntary donation. Queen says, well, according to your bank account, you have 560,000 slugs. And Jazz is like, yeah. And she says, well, maybe a 500,000 slug donation to the city of Artemis will help me to keep you here. Jazz is like, what? She says, if you want to stay here, that's what you got to do. Jazz is like, fuck. And eventually Jazz agrees to give her the money. She then goes to Hartnell's. As soon as she walks in, everyone in Hartnell's goes, it's Jazz! And then they all pretend to pass out. Ah! And she's like, ha ha ha, very funny. Everyone in Hartnell's is like, ha ha ha, Jess is alive, Jess saved us, yeah, yeah, yeah. And Jess is like, I'll pay all your drinks. Ah! She sits down with Dale, and Dale's like, so we're best friends now, right? Because you forgive me, right? And she's like, oh, that was just because I was about to die. And Dale says, you can't take it back. She's like, damn it. And Dale says, you know, Tyler's doing really well. He'd love to see you again. Jazz says, maybe. Maybe we could do that. Dale says, how about that Sabota guy? You and him a thing? She's like, no. And he's like, I bet you 1,000 slugs that you'll be sleeping with him within a month. And she says, I'm not taking that bet. That's pretty much where the story ends. And then we have a final letter to Kelvin explaining everything that happened, and also saying, hey, there's a guy named Jin Chu on Earth. You might want to track him down and figure out where he works, because the company that he works for is about to make a lot of money, and you want to invest in them as soon as possible. And that, my friends, has been Artemis by Andy Weir. I'm not quite sure if I believe that ending is scientifically possible, but we'll just say that it is. Because if not, then we have a terrible ending. It feels more like the good dream that a director will give you before it gives you the soul-crushing twist ending that says, actually, she died. But, yeah. If you like what I'm doing, go ahead and click that subscribe button. If you like this video specifically, go ahead and click that like button. And go ahead and leave a comment letting me know what's the most awkward ending that you have ever experienced. I've been Elliot the Purple-Haired Doofus. This has been Buddy Reads, reminding you to watch up your camera radius. And I will see you all in the spoiler-free review of Artemis by Andy Weir. Toodles!